This is Syrone Campbell and 6 Minutes with Syrone Campbell, Segment 3. Welcome to Segment 3 in our series 6 Minutes with Syrone Campbell, where we are discussing how to know God. A great deal is taken from my book, The God Conversation, as well as other of my writings and references from notable professional writers and writing sources. This will be my last segment validating God, but certainly not exhaustive, as I have written a lot on this subject. However, after this, we will move on to the next segment titled, Whose God Are We Talking About? Again, I think it important that all should be given ample opportunity to make the decision to believe God or not to. All important decisions need substantial amounts of information, and folk that are agnostic as opposed to atheists require a fair amount of rationale to go along with the sparse faith that they harbor, perhaps not openly. In the last segment, we talked about how an awareness of knowledge of our biological invisible world can lead to perceiving a concept of God. In these few minutes, I want to give an added dynamic so that it is less elusive. It is very important to keep up front in our minds that when there are opposing belief systems expressed among world populations, it is primarily due to differing world views, cultural and educational reasons influencing rigid perspectives. Global scientific communities manage to work together by adhering to use the scientific principle as the global community standard. Since now we embark into regions of knowledge admittedly just out of the reach, as of yet, of science due to quantum physics, we are in uncharted territory when rationalizing into regions where sizes are smaller than what would be considered material at all. Less than wave-like, perhaps conceptually as string theory presents itself, and having vector properties for the consideration of spirit-like. Here the scientific principle descends to disuse. We therefore need to establish new common grounds, even if a point of departure. When I talk with atheists who are willing to find a common ground, I would often introduce a platform where both can stand on stipulation. A solution, and a good place to start for learned biases due to culture or any skewed worldview, would be to pose the critical question in a balanced framework that constrains auto-rejection from opposing views. Introduce, therefore, the use of an allowance in the rules of theistic and atheistic dialogue engagement. For an example, in the theistic case of the existence of God, let's call this worldview A, the following is stipulated, which means allowed by atheists. 1. The word God has content. 2. The existence of God is not exclusively a scientific question. 3. All knowledge is not empirical. 4. Source of evidence is not empirical only. As from my book, the recent discoveries at Tevatron and elsewhere are hardly in the realm of materiality as we have known it to be. In the atheistic case of the non-existence of God, worldview B, the following is stipulated, allowed by the theist. 1. Scientific questions are comprehensive and safe. 2. Empirical evidence is the scientific standard if usable. 3. Belief must be based on fact. 4. There is not a universal consensus for the meaning of God. Given that there is this human phenomena whose participants, numbering above 50% world population, including reputable scientists and philosophers from diverse global cultures who subscribe to believe in the universal concept of God, variety of religious practice notwithstanding, and near 50% world population, including reputable science and philosophers from diverse global cultures who do not subscribe to believe in the universal concept of God, then which explanation, the theistic one or the atheistic one, is most sufficient and most satisfying to that phenomena? If a non-believer and you say, how can I accept the proposition above if it does not affect the real reality? And all these things that we do not know, they do not matter either. I will ask then, if both science-oriented theologians as well as science-minded atheists agree that we have evidence of Neanderthals as past Earth dwellers, and the young Earth proponents say they must have come from Adam's seed, but the old Earth proponents say they originated prior to Adam, then paying attention to unfolding science will tell us it is no longer and should no longer be considered and presented as a problem. Why? The same evidence that both sides agree to as for Neanderthals' existence shows no connective DNA links to Homo sapiens, from which we all agree we derived, as do other pre-man such as Cro-Magnon man. So I will now say that I cannot avow conflicts between God and science, and take encouragement from the public statement from the International Council on Biblical Inerrancy, Summit Number 2, 1982, on the relationship of science and scripture. And I quote, "It is sometimes argued that our exegesis should not be influenced by scientific observations. We believe this view is mistaken. While the Bible clearly gives more specific information about our relationship to God than one can possibly deduce from nature's revelation, it does not necessarily follow that our understanding of the physical world, its origin, etc., will also be more clearly deduced from God's revelation in His Word than His revelation in His world. Since both are revelations from God, and therefore give a unified story, it seems quite permissible to consider all the evidence, scientific as well as biblical, to be significant to the degree that each revelation can be clearly interpreted." This is now the end of this segment. I know you have comments by now. Syrone Campbell.wordpress.com